Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Untitled. I'm going to give like a 5-minute intro around what AI is from my perspective before we actually discuss together with Ariel about some of the deeper discussion. So as the introduction said, I'm the director for the AI lab in Paris for Facebook. This lab is now 50 people doing fundamental research and open research. And the lab of Facebook AI Research worldwide has been opened 4 years ago, and the lab in Paris, which is now the biggest of all the AI labs of Facebook, has been opened 3 years ago. So I wanted to start by giving like some kind of a broad definition about what AI is, because it's a question I usually have, and I think that's important. And the definition doesn't help that much, but I'm going to give it anyway. The AI right now is seen as a subfield of computer science. And it's the field that concerns the theory and development of system or algorithm that can perform tasks that we naturally think as requiring human intelligence. So why the definition doesn't help too much? That's because there is this normally, so which doesn't cover, it's not very clear. And it also implies that we know what is covered by human intelligence, which can be subject to a lot of debate. But generally, it's a lot of things that can be automated, but for which we don't exactly know the exact solution. Okay? So for instance, trying to go from Paris to Lisbon using the shortest trip was at some point considered as AI because it's complicated to find the shortest path in a graph. But actually, we found the exact solution in the 80s, and now we don't consider that as AI anymore because basically there is an exact solution that works. So with this definition in mind, AI is started in the 50s. And has been what's been called like AI winters, in the sense that people were believing that AI was completely a fraud, and then AI summers, etc. Right now we are in a big summer for AI. That's why I'm here, and that's why companies like Facebook, Google, or etc. are investing a lot in it. And why is it the case? Is that basically there are two things. There is a lot of successes of AI right now, and a lot of hopes about what AI could bring. Okay, so the success, and I think these successes and the hopes are actually very interesting in terms of what the field of AI is right now. I think it's important to differentiate between what I would call easy AI. So easy AI can be seen as stuff that basically the system can be solving right now. So I will give you a few examples. And strong AI or difficult AI, which is a lot of things that we think AI should be able to do in the future, maybe, but we don't really know when, and that could actually be potentially super, very powerful, etc. But this is supposed to happen late, and the easy AI is already happening now, and is actually bringing some business successes and some disruption to a lot of markets. Whereas the strong AI is the one that when we talk about like superhuman or super robot, is really not there at all. We don't even know when it could happen. But it's still mixed with the first one. So when I talk about easy AI, I talk about things like perception for machine, which means that machine able to recognize object in images, machine able to do speech transcription, machine able to also do search across like billions of documents, like search engines are doing. So I have a few slides to give a few examples. So exactly. So this is an example just to give you an idea about what I think about what easy AI is, or what is AI that works. Okay. In this case, you have a picture on the left, a picture of a woman bending to give some food maybe to her dog. And so this 4 picture shows you what AI systems are able to do. So this was in 2012, where basically the started of the new AI revolution arrived, and people were super impressed because the machine was able to tell that this image was the image of a person. Okay, so all what the machine was able to do is that to say that this is an image of a person, even though it's much more complex. Between 2012 and 2017, okay, so last year, we're able to go from this description that is pretty scarce to this that is much more detailed, in the sense that you can recognize multiple objects, you can tell where they are, you can even do like the boundaries at a pixel level of where they are. So, and this is the latest. So this is usually video, but it doesn't play here. So right now in our lab, what we're able of doing is that not only we're able to go around the person, but we're able to predict what is the 3D envelope of the bodies. Okay? So with a single image or with a video, you can actually detect what is actually the whole morphology of people. So this is the kind of thing that AI can do. It can actually have a pretty deep and complete, I would say, representation of the kind of modalities that can be exposed to. But it doesn't tell you much more in terms of what this image means. It just tells you what are the objects. So if you want to go to what the image means, what people have been trying to do is to go to trying to describe the image. So, OK, you can find the object. Now try to describe the image automatically, which is called captioning. And there we had a lot of successes. Like, people were super impressed, because if you give this image, you can say a man is riding a wave on a surfboard in the water. And this is completely generated automatically by a machine that has never seen this image. OK? And it was considered as a breakthrough in terms of, OK, machines are not only able to recognize what's in an image, but they can start to describe it. And so you start to have like maybe more intelligence to it. But this was a mistake. Yeah, because you have to be very careful when you try to talk about machines that are starting to develop reasoning, etc. Because if you give to the same machine images that are much more rare, like this one, then you will have very, very funny caption or completely false. So for this one, for instance, the machine would say this is an airplane parked on the tarmac at an airport, okay? So which is obviously completely wrong. And so what doesn't work there, and it was working before, is that before, this is, let's say, an image that is frequent and that is actually pretty naturally occurring. When you have a man that is standing, which is what the machine can do, they can detect that there is a man standing in water. When the machine sees a man standing in water, the machine is going to say that someone is surfing on the water, because that's the most obvious case. Okay? On the other one, if you detect an airplane, if you detect a road, what you're going to say is that this is an airplane is parked on the tarmac. Okay? If you just detect an airplane and not the road, you will say that it's an airplane flying in the sky. That's just as simple as that. As soon as you go into something that's a bit more complex, because this is unusual, then the machine is completely lost. And I think that's a very good illustration in terms of what we can do and what we can't. The machine are able to detect where the objects are. They can do the transcription of speech. But as soon as you would expect something that is more complex, that requires reasoning or common sense, then we are very, very far from it. I just wanted to finish by an application that we did in the lab at Facebook AI Research about summarization. So in summarization, in this case, we take a news article. So this article was about Deadpool 2, the movie. And summarization, the task is to be able to generate a summary of an article automatically. Okay, it's a task that's been going on for AI for a while, and even people are starting to say that we can start to write articles automatically, some kind of things. So I will try to give you basically the state of the art of what machines are capable of doing. So I won't read the whole article. It's basically talking about the new trailer for the movie. And with this, we have a machine that in our lab it's open source now, that is able to generate summaries. And you can, what is nice is that you have this, and you can control the length of the summary you would like to see. Okay, so that's something that you can do. So if you ask for a one-sentence summary, you could get the latest trailer for Deadpool 2 is here. It was the highest grossing film of all time in 2016, which is not too bad, even though you have to figure out the connection between those. And then if you start to have longer, if you have to have longer summary, then you start to see what works and what doesn't. So the latest trailer for Deadpool 2 is here. It was the highest grossing film of all time in 2016. Making a sequel is all but inevitable. So which is actually not bad. The film is the brainchild of 3 of the most famous films in the film. It starts to be a bit weird, okay? Because we start to require a bunch of reasoning and start to generate text that starts to be long. So it's basically not working completely. And then you can go further. Let's say I can go to the longest. The latest trailer for Deadpool 2 is here. It was the highest grossing film of all time in 2016, making a sequel all but inevitable. The film is based on an action-packed sequence. The film was directed by the same filmmakers of the first film. So all that is actually not completely false, but you don't see it very well. And then you see that the filmmaker will also return for the sequel, which is not perfect. So this was a short introduction. I thought it took maybe a bit too much time. And now I would like to discuss a bit with Ariel about what she thinks of all this.
I guess I don't have a ton of comments on what you just said.
Okay.
That's sort of.
Why? Because you agree?
I was sort of curious. You mentioned stronger AI happening sometime in the future. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with AlphaGo, the game that DeepMind created that learned how to play Go on its own. And that surprised people with how quickly it was developed.
Yeah.
Do you think that can happen in other instances with AI? Should we be prepared?
Yeah, that's a great question. So AlphaGo was this machine, and then after AlphaGo was AlphaZero. So it was this algorithm created by Google DeepMind that was able to learn to play Go better than a human, and at some point was able to train itself to play Go better than a human, which is very impressive. It's very, very impressive, and was really a breakthrough. Still, we have to put that into the context of what it's capable of doing. This machine is able to play Go and only Go. What it means is that Go is a game with pretty strict rules, a domain that is what we call a closed domain, in the sense that you see everything that's happening on the Go ban, you know how many stones are going to be put, and you know the rules, etc. So the model within this very small world, finally, was able to try to figure out what are the best tactics, and that was very impressive. That said, as soon as you will move out of the Go ban, and you will try to act with humans, act with real situation, act with what we call open domain, in the sense that everything can happen, and actually the realm of possibility is huge, then we have no idea how this can transfer. Okay? AlphaGo could be transferred maybe to a more complex game, and at Facebook we have a project around StarCraft, which is a real strategy game that requires much more complexity than a Go. But still, this is still a video game, and the Go, my final point was that AlphaZero required to play billions of games against itself to be able to achieve super pro level, whereas if you want a machine to work in the real world, you will not have billions of tries.
OK, so then I was thinking we should go back to the actual description of this panel, which is who should be afraid of AI? Well, there were a couple questions, actually. Hopefully we'll get to a couple of them. My own personal take with what I've read with AI is that I would say we should all be scared of AI, but in a way similar to how we should all be scared of cars or planes or any other really powerful technology that can do really great things, but can also cause a lot of harm. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think right now we are developing a lot of tools. I see AI as creating new tools. Okay, the same way as computers have created a lot of new tools, cars as well. And so, of course, with new tools come new usage, and with new usage come maybe a new application, maybe a new threat, etc. So, I think what's very important, and I was listening before for the AI trips, or etc. I think it's important that as many people as possible are basically aware of what AI is capable of doing, and what are the changes that are happening, so that people are prepared and they see it happening. Because the changes are going to be, I mean, progressive, right? It's not going to be a disruption. And so in terms of being afraid, I think that is something that's very important that the AI community is realizing, that we need to do research in the open, in the sense that we don't want, AI can be transformative to many, many sectors. We don't know exactly which one or how much is going to be impacted. What's important is that the research lab, like the one I'm working on, are basically sharing where they are at. Okay, I just showed you how good or how bad we are in summarization, so that you have an idea and say, okay, you can actually generate something that is sort of okay, but it still requires a human to go after it. And so that's basically, I think, the kind of understanding that we would like the most people to have, so that they basically say, okay, generating summarization completely is maybe not for tomorrow, but maybe in 10 years I can expect to see it happen. Whereas having a superhuman agent that can help me to do everything today, I didn't even mention it because it's like way beyond the horizon.
So you're working with a company that is one of the few that's really implementing AI tools into society far more than just about anyone else. How do we know when it's safe to say, okay, this tool is ready for the general public?
Yeah, so So that's a good question, and that really goes into what I think is very important is that the separating the tools from the usage. So at Facebook, we do both. It's true that in the lab, we're developing new tools, and also, of course, in many of the products, we are actually applying those tools for many cases. I think right now, most of the AI is taking critical decisions, like deciding if something should be on the platform or not, something should be removed, something should be seen as critical. All of this is reviewed by human. Okay, so we're using the AI to do a lot of the legwork to try to basically check that the content might be problematic, check that there might be problem with the content, but then the final decision is still taken by a human because we can't rely enough on the AI to basically be able to decide by itself that this should be on the platform or not. Okay, so right now I think most of the cases, for really the critical cases, we really try to go into partnership with human and machine. And I think that's really a model that, that I think we should nurture for many applications. Just to go back to the summarization, maybe in the newsroom you won't put that directly on your publication, I don't think, but maybe you could use this kind of tool as basically a way to basically go faster in terms of do some kind of synthesis of some of documents so that you can have an idea that is relevant for you, and then you read the whole thing or not. You know, this kind of thing. Same for translation. You know, translation is doing a lot of progress, but you can't expect to do like translating a full book or a full article with an automatic system and have it without any mistake. That said, you can use it to do a first draft that you're editing later. And I think that's a lot of the way of operating that I think is going to be developed.
So the next question that was in the description of the panel is artificial intelligence good or evil for our societies and democracies? And I would go back to the comment earlier about how it can be used for good or bad. It's not good or evil. It's a powerful technology. It's like any other powerful technology. And so that said, because it can be used badly, I am worried about the impact on democracy. I'm American. I've seen the impact on democracy. And so one of the things that I've been concerned about is how we can try to figure out in advance what issues could crop up. I like the internet as an example. It's sort of based on this ad-based online ecosystem where the power sort of ends up in the hands of the advertisers. But what if it had been developed based on subscription model or micropayments? What if we had anticipated trolls and all the negative comments that come along with anonymity? What can we do to anticipate problems?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tough question. I think the basic, really, I mean, the basic, let's say, action that we take is to try to not to hide what we're doing and what we're capable of doing, and to open source everything, in the sense that maybe some people are going to use it to generate some trolling bots or whatever. But then at the same time, people should have the same technology to be able to fight those. So I think there was, I don't think, if you talk about what happened in the US, I think there was also a new technology coming in, maybe, but it was mostly like nobody was picturing that this technology could be used for this purpose and this way. And so it's not really only like what the technology can do. It's also like, oh, okay, now we have maybe some people, organizations that can use it at this scale to try to game a system the way nobody thought it was gameable. And so I think so right now, the way it's happening is that before people were developing AI algorithm or either on other types of algorithm, are trying to say, okay, I'm going to leave the usage for the people who wants to do. Now I think there is also let's say the whole community of AI is realizing that it can have like a big impact in many cases. And so the idea is that how could we try to basically generate algorithms that are also being able to be resistant to some threat, that can be resistant to some malfunctions, so that can be robust to some attacks, etc. So this is basically, within the AI community, there is a whole sub-community that is about robustness to attack by AI algorithm that is developing. It's pretty new. It's like 2 or 3 years old. And so people, within the community, some people are developing algorithm, and some other people are trying to see, okay, but how can I game your algorithm? And all of it in the open and open source. So we basically try to develop, and basically the algorithm in the end is better, stronger, more robust, etc. So I think that's the way that I think we should pursue, and by being able to fund, or to recognize, or to the initiative that try to promote this, like yours.
So we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to touch on the very last question that was in the description, and that is, how will AI impact content creators? I guess as a user, one of my biggest concerns is that of trust. We're familiar with the traditional news office, which can authenticate stories for us. In theory, we trust various news outlets to let us know that they have done the research, this journalist has written an article correctly. If something goes wrong with that article, we know who's at fault. But we're living in this world of social media, of memes, of stories that are going viral so fast that we can't keep up. How can we trust what we're seeing online? I don't know if you have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive question. So, I mean, from my perspective, and I would say that, so building an automatic fact checker, for instance, with AI, is something that we all dream. I mean, that would be like really interesting, especially if you can relate to sources automatically and that you can actually try to divide. This is very, very difficult because language is difficult. So that's why I try to show very quickly. Detecting that there is a person in an image can be tricky sometimes, but there is not too much ambiguity. I mean, this is, whereas in language and a piece of, especially a piece of news or an opinion or something, it depends on the context, it depends on a lot of common sense, it depends on the history, it depends on a lot of background around a specific issue. All of this is very, very difficult for a machine to ingest. And maybe we could have a machine that could ingest it on a specific topic, but we would like something that can cover all of the topic all over the world in all languages. Okay? And that's very difficult. So I think related to the trust, I think right now the most important is the transparency and what does this news come from, who wrote it or who published it, and try to see, and why do I see this? You know, this kind of, why am I showing? And I think that's the way we can do. Before we can have actually a tool that can even say, you can click and say, okay, this is 87% true, which is, I think, very, very difficult to do.
So one final comment that I want to make is the idea that I think a lot of pressure is put on AI researchers, and for good reason, to be responsible for how the AI programs are designed. But I also think that reporters have a really important role to play in making sure they're reporting accurately so that it can be designed as helpful as possible. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's the place to
right?
to say that. No, what I think is important is to try to really keep in mind what I said at the beginning, that AI is very, very vast in terms of what it covers as a term, and that there are like a lot of technological places where it's going to have an impact. It's already have an impact now, and I talked about the image, I could have talked about the speech, and then there's a lot of stuff that are still in the realm of like science fiction or guesses. It might happen, it might not, it might happen in 50 years, in 10 years, no, in 10 years I don't think so, in 60 years, in 100 years, or might never happen. We still don't know. And so I think everybody should be careful and not to mix the both of them in the same bucket, because I think it's confusing the message. And I think we're running out of time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
See you.